The television courtroom had never witnessed such a moment of pure, unfiltered contempt, meeting its absolute annihilation. Brenda Hargrove, a 48-year-old self-proclaimed wellness influencer with 89,000 Instagram followers who had built an entire online empire body-shaming strangers while claiming to be a victim of discrimination herself, stood in Judge Judy's courtroom with the kind of entitled superiority that could only come from someone who had weaponized victimhood for profit. Her perfectly manicured finger, adorned with rings that cost more than most people's monthly rent, was already pointing accusingly at the bench as the words that would destroy her entire career forever began forming on her glossed lips. "You're just a stupid judge who doesn't understand what it's like to face real discrimination in this world." The silence that followed was absolutely nuclear. Every single person in that courtroom felt the atmosphere shift from professional legal proceedings to something far more dangerous, something that would be replayed over 200 million times across every social media platform imaginable, something that would trigger the largest defamation lawsuit in daytime television history and expose a fraud so extensive it would lead to federal criminal charges. Judge Judy's eyes narrowed into the kind of death stare that had made seasoned attorneys with decades of courtroom experience break down and beg for mercy on national television. Her fingers interlocked on the bench with the calm precision of a predator who had just spotted the fatal weakness in her prey. But what happened next would cost Brenda Hargrove $180,000 in immediate damages, destroy her entire social media empire overnight, get her banned from every major platform for fraud and harassment, trigger an IRS investigation that would uncover $2.3 million in unreported income, and expose a systematic extortion scheme spanning 4 years and involving 47 innocent small business owners who had been terrorized into paying discrimination settlements for incidents that never actually happened. But here's what makes this story absolutely insane. Something that will leave you speechless when you understand the full scope of Brenda's criminal enterprise. Brenda didn't just lose her case. She didn't just get embarrassed on national television in front of millions of viewers. What Judge Judy did to her in the next 11 minutes was so devastatingly brutal, so righteously furious, so legally precise, that it became the most viral courtroom moment in television history, shared over 200 million times with the hashtags "Your stupid judge backfire" and "Karma is real" trending for 9 consecutive days across every platform. We're talking about a woman who walked into that courtroom thinking she was about to create content for her followers, thinking she would expose Judge Judy as just another fat-phobic boomer who didn't understand modern body positivity culture, only to discover that Judge Judy had spent the previous 72 hours uncovering a pattern of fraud, extortion, and criminal conspiracy so extensive it would trigger investigations by the FBI, the Federal Trade Commission, and the California Attorney General's office. The case seemed simple enough on the surface, just a dispute between a wellness influencer and a small gym owner over what Brenda claimed was discrimination based on her body size. But what the audience didn't know, what Brenda herself didn't realize until it was far too late to save herself, was that Judge Judy had already identified 34 lies in Brenda's initial paperwork, had forensic analysis of her edited Instagram videos showing exactly how she manipulated footage to create fake discrimination incidents, had testimony from 11 previous victims who had been too afraid or too financially devastated to fight back against this professional extortion artist, and had financial records proving Brenda had collected over $890,000 through fraudulent discrimination settlements over the past 4 years. Before we show you the exact moment when this entitled fraud called America's most feared television judge stupid, and instantly regretted every single life choice that brought her to that courtroom, make sure you hit that like button right now if you believe that people who weaponize real social justice issues to extort innocent small business owners deserve to be exposed and destroyed on national television. Subscribe so you never miss these explosive courtroom moments where entitled scammers who think their victim status makes them untouchable finally meet someone who won't tolerate their behavior and isn't afraid to teach them lessons about real consequences. Trust me. What you're about to witness in the next 25 minutes will restore your faith that justice still matters, that karma is real and has perfect timing, and that Judge Judy is still the undisputed queen of destroying people who think they can manipulate the system. Brenda Hargrove had never wanted to be in a real courtroom. After 4 years of destroying small businesses with edited videos, fake discrimination claims, and orchestrated social media harassment campaigns, she had gotten away with everything by targeting vulnerable small business owners who couldn't afford extended legal battles, by using her influencer platform as a weapon to threaten complete business destruction, and by having an attorney who had perfected the art of filing discrimination lawsuits that were cheaper to settle than to fight. She had collected $890,000 through extortion disguised as discrimination settlements, built a social media empire that generated $15,000 per month from sponsorships and affiliate marketing, and convinced herself that she was untouchable because the system was designed to protect people like her from accountability. She walked into Judge Judy's courtroom that Wednesday morning, wearing an outfit carefully selected to project victimhood, designer athleisure that cost $800 but looked casual enough to seem relatable, with her phone ready to record and her 89,000 Instagram followers waiting for her next viral moment of standing up against discrimination. She had posted Instagram stories the night before, bragging about how she was going to teach this old judge about body positivity and modern discrimination law. She had practiced her victim performance for weeks, complete with rehearsed tears and carefully timed emotional breakdowns. She genuinely believed this would be just another authority figure she could manipulate with social justice buzzwords, strategic tears, and the implicit threat of social media destruction. She had absolutely no idea that she was walking into an ambush that Judge Judy had been preparing since the moment this case landed on her desk. What Brenda didn't know was that Marcus Chen, the 34-year-old gym owner sitting across from her in that courtroom, represented everything she claimed to fight against, but actually embodied herself. Marcus was a first-generation American whose parents had immigrated from Taiwan with almost nothing, working minimum wage jobs while putting themselves through night school to build better lives. Marcus had worked 3 jobs while earning his degree in exercise science, studying during the day, and working as a personal trainer, janitor, and delivery driver at night. He had saved every single dollar for 7 years, living in a converted garage and eating rice and vegetables most nights to accumulate the $120,000 he needed for the down payment on his gym space. Fit Life Wellness Center had been Marcus's entire life for the past 3 years. He arrived every morning at 4:30 a.m. to open for early bird clients, stayed until 10:00 p.m. to accommodate people who worked late shifts, and offered free fitness classes every Saturday morning to low-income families who couldn't afford gym memberships. He had built something beautiful through pure hard work, integrity, and genuine passion for helping people achieve their health goals, earning a 4.9-star rating across every review platform, with over 800 clients praising his inclusive approach and supportive environment. He had created a space where people of all body types, fitness levels, and backgrounds felt welcomed and supported in their wellness journeys. And Brenda Hargrove had nearly destroyed it all in 96 hours with one edited video, a coordinated social media attack, and an army of followers who didn't care about the truth. The incident that brought them to Judge Judy's courtroom had started 4 months earlier when Brenda walked into Fit Life Wellness Center with 2 friends and a predetermined plan to create content that would generate outrage, sympathy, and ultimately, a profitable settlement. She had specifically chosen Marcus's gym after researching small, independent fitness centers that would be vulnerable to social media destruction and unable to afford extended legal battles. What Brenda didn't know was that Marcus had security cameras throughout his facility with crystal clear audio recording, a fact that would prove to be her ultimate downfall. Brenda had demanded a free premium membership in exchange for promotion to her 89,000 Instagram followers, claiming that her body positivity content would bring him tons of new clients. When Marcus politely declined, explaining that he had a strict policy against free memberships for influencers, but offered a generous 20% discount for honest reviews from paying customers, Brenda had immediately switched into performance mode. She had started shouting about fat phobia, body discrimination, and toxic fitness culture, despite Marcus having said absolutely nothing about her body size or appearance. Her friends had recorded the entire confrontation from multiple carefully chosen angles while Brenda performed for the cameras, hitting all her buzzwords about discrimination, oppression, fat phobia, and everything wrong with the fitness industry. When Marcus had finally asked Brenda to leave after 23 minutes of disruption that was frightening other gym members, Brenda had issued her threat with a smile that made it clear this wasn't her first time destroying someone's livelihood for profit. "You're going to regret this. I'm going to make sure everyone knows what a fat-phobic, discriminatory establishment you run here. By tomorrow, you'll be begging to give me that free membership just to make this go away." Within 4 hours, Brenda had posted her masterfully edited video that cut 23 minutes down to 3 minutes and 47 seconds, showing only Marcus looking frustrated and asking Brenda to leave, with all context about Brenda's demands, threats, and disruptive performance completely removed. The caption read, "Fat-phobic gym owner attacks me for just wanting to work out. This is why plus-size people are afraid of fitness spaces. Share to expose discrimination." The video went absolutely viral, hitting 800,000 views in 8 hours and eventually reaching 4.7 million views as Brenda's followers mobilized with coordinated precision to destroy Marcus's business. FitLife Wellness Center's Google reviews dropped from 4.9 stars to 1.8 stars overnight, with over 600 one-star reviews from people who had never even visited the gym, most copy-pasting the same accusations about fat phobia and discrimination. Marcus's Instagram was flooded with death threats and harassment, so severe his wife stopped letting their children use social media. Someone spray-painted the words, "Fat Shamer," across his storefront window in bright red letters. Protesters showed up outside his business with signs claiming he discriminated against plus-size clients, even though 40% of his actual membership consisted of people Brenda would classify as plus-size. His regular clients stopped coming, afraid of the harassment or believing Brenda's lies without bothering to verify the truth. His new membership sign-ups dropped to 0. His corporate wellness contracts were canceled as companies distanced themselves from the controversy. His revenue dropped 71% in 1 week as he watched 3 years of hard work crumble because of one influencer's calculated lies designed to generate profit through manufactured outrage. That's when Brenda had sent her private Instagram message offering to make it all go away for $25,000. The same extortion tactic she had successfully used on 46 previous victims who had been too exhausted, too broke, or too afraid of continued social media destruction to fight back. But Marcus Chen was different. He had saved the unedited security camera footage from his gym showing the entire 23-minute confrontation, including every demand Brenda made, every threat she issued, every moment of her calculated performance for the cameras. And most damning of all, the moment before entering when Brenda could be heard clearly instructing her friends on exactly how to film and what angles would make the eventual video most damaging. Instead of paying Brenda's extortion demand, Marcus had spent his emergency savings hiring an attorney and filing a lawsuit for defamation, harassment, extortion, and loss of business. That lawsuit had somehow made its way to Judge Judy's courtroom, and Marcus sat there now clutching a folder full of evidence that would expose Brenda's entire criminal enterprise, trembling with a mixture of hope and terror, praying that someone would finally hold this professional victim accountable for destroying innocent people's lives for profit. What neither Marcus nor Brenda knew was that Judge Judy had already done something she rarely did anymore. She had conducted her own independent investigation that went far beyond the standard case file review. When her research team had initially flagged Brenda's case as potentially interesting television, Judge Judy had started digging deeper and discovered a pattern that sent chills down her spine. This wasn't just one influencer having a dispute with one small business owner. This was a sophisticated criminal operation that had been systematically targeting and destroying vulnerable small businesses across 3 states for years. Judge Judy had found 46 other businesses that had been targeted by Brenda using the exact same playbook. Judge Judy had found 46 other businesses across California, Oregon, and Washington that had been targeted by Brenda using the exact same playbook with terrifying precision. A family-owned bakery in Sacramento, whose owner had paid $18,000 to make Brenda's harassment campaign stop after she claimed they discriminated against her for being plus-size, even though the bakery had simply run out of the specific cupcake flavor she demanded. A boutique clothing store in Portland that had lost $45,000 in revenue after Brenda's viral video accused them of not carrying her size, despite the store specializing in plus-size fashion, and Brenda never actually asking what sizes they stocked. A yoga studio in Seattle that had paid $22,000 to settle after Brenda claimed the instructor made fat-phobic comments, even though the studio's security footage showed no such interaction ever occurred. Each case followed the identical, calculated pattern that revealed this wasn't random bad behavior, but a systematic criminal enterprise designed to generate profit through manufactured discrimination incidents. Brenda would research small, independent businesses owned by immigrants or first-generation Americans who would be especially vulnerable to accusations of discrimination. She would enter with friends positioned to record from multiple angles, make unreasonable demands she knew would be declined, perform an escalating confrontation designed to look like discrimination when edited, post carefully manipulated video content that removed all context, mobilize her followers to destroy the business through review bombing and harassment, then privately offer to make it all disappear for a settlement payment that was always just low enough to be cheaper than fighting a prolonged legal battle. But Judge Judy had discovered something even more disturbing during her investigation, something that transformed this from a case about one fraudulent influencer into something that would trigger federal criminal investigations and change social media platform policies forever. Brenda's criminal operation wasn't just sophisticated in execution, it was organized, documented, and taught to others for profit. Judge Judy's research team had uncovered Brenda's private online course titled Monetizing Your Activism: How to Make Discrimination Work for You, which she sold for $997 to aspiring influencers who wanted to learn her methods. The course materials, which Judge Judy had obtained through a former student who had grown disgusted with the scheme, were absolutely jaw-dropping in their calculated cruelty and criminal intent. Brenda had literally created a step-by-step blueprint for committing extortion disguised as social justice activism. The course modules included chilling titles like Selecting Vulnerable Targets, Small Businesses That Can't Fight Back, Creating the Perfect Discrimination Incident, Staging and Recording Techniques, Video Editing for Maximum Outrage, What to Cut and What to Keep, Mobilizing Your Followers for Coordinated Attack Campaigns, and most damning of all, Settlement Negotiations, How Much to Ask For and When to Accept. Judge Judy had documentation showing that Brenda had taught this criminal methodology to 67 other influencers, creating an entire network of fraud artists who were systematically targeting small businesses across the country using Brenda's proven extortion playbook. The scope of the conspiracy was staggering. Conservative estimates suggested that Brenda's network had extracted over $3.2 million from small business owners over the past 4 years, destroying countless lives and livelihoods while hiding behind the legitimate language of social justice and discrimination law. What made Judge Judy's blood boil with righteous fury was the demographic profile of Brenda's victims. They weren't corporate giants or wealthy business owners who could absorb the financial losses. They were immigrants pursuing the American dream, first-generation business owners who had sacrificed everything to build something from nothing, families who had sunk their life savings into businesses that Brenda destroyed for profit while claiming to be fighting for marginalized communities. The cruel irony was that Brenda was specifically targeting the exact vulnerable populations she claimed to be protecting, exploiting America's genuine desire to address discrimination by turning legitimate concerns into weapons for personal enrichment. But Judge Judy had saved her most explosive discovery for the perfect moment in the courtroom, and that moment was rapidly approaching. Judge Judy had obtained audio recordings from Brenda's private strategy sessions with her attorney, discussions that proved beyond any doubt that Brenda knew her discrimination claims were fraudulent, that she deliberately manufactured incidents for profit, and that she viewed her victims with contempt while calculating how much money she could extract from their suffering. These recordings would destroy any remaining shred of credibility Brenda might try to maintain, but Judge Judy was waiting for the perfect moment to deploy this nuclear evidence. She wanted Brenda to commit fully to her lies first, to perform her victim routine for the cameras, to demonstrate the exact manipulative tactics she had used on 46 previous victims. Judge Judy wanted the entire world to see Brenda's calculated performance before exposing the cold-blooded criminal hiding behind manufactured tears and social justice language. The courtroom atmosphere was electric with tension as Judge Judy prepared to begin the proceedings. On one side of the gallery sat Brenda's supporters, mostly young influencers and body positivity activists who followed her on social media and genuinely believed she was a warrior fighting against systemic discrimination. They had their phones out ready to record, wearing T-shirts with Brenda's branded slogans, whispering excitedly about how their hero was going to destroy this out-of-touch boomer judge who didn't understand modern discrimination or body positivity culture. On the other side sat Marcus's community, immigrant families who had rallied around their friend, small business owners who understood the vulnerability Marcus faced, personal trainers and gym members who knew the truth about Marcus's inclusive and supportive environment, and most significantly, 4 of Brenda's previous victims who had traveled specifically to watch her finally face accountability for the destruction she had caused their lives. The tension between the two groups was so thick you could cut it with a knife, and the bailiff had already positioned himself strategically to intervene if the hostility erupted into physical confrontation. Judge Judy opened her folder and looked directly at Brenda with an expression that gave away nothing. The judge had perfected this neutral mask over decades on the bench, the ability to appear completely calm while internally preparing to demolish someone's entire world view with surgical precision. She began with her standard opening, her voice cutting through the courtroom with the kind of authority that made people instinctively sit up, straighter, and pay attention. Miss Hargrove, you are being sued by Mr. Chen for defamation, harassment, extortion, and damages to his business stemming from a video you posted on social media claiming he discriminated against you based on your body size. Before we hear from Mr. Chen, I want to hear your version of what happened. Tell me in your own words why you believe you're in the right here. Brenda's response was everything Judge Judy had expected, and so much worse than even her decades of experience had prepared her for. Instead of simply answering the question with facts, Brenda launched into a theatrical performance that would have made soap opera actresses cringe with embarrassment at its obvious manipulation and calculated emotional manipulation. She began with a deep, shuddering breath, the kind reserved for moments of profound trauma. And her voice cracked with practiced emotion as she said, "Your Honor, what happened to me at that gym was one of the most traumatic experiences of my life. I walked in just wanting to feel welcomed in a fitness space, something that plus-size people are systematically denied in this fat-phobic society. I approached the owner respectfully, offering him an incredible opportunity to show his gym was inclusive by partnering with my platform that reaches 89,000 people who trust my voice and my advocacy for body positivity." Judge Judy's eyebrows raised slightly, the first warning sign that experienced viewers knew meant trouble was brewing just beneath the surface. But Brenda, completely misreading the room and blinded by years of successful manipulation, continued her performance with increasing dramatic flair. But instead of being grateful for the opportunity to demonstrate that his gym welcomed all bodies, he became hostile and aggressive toward me. "Your Honor, this is a classic example of fat phobia and discrimination that plus-size people face every single day in spaces that claim to be about health and wellness. The fitness industry is built on body shaming and making people like me feel unwelcome. And what happened at Mr. Chen's gym is just another example of that systemic oppression." She was speaking in a deliberately slow, overly emotional manner, as if explaining something tragic to someone who couldn't possibly understand the depth of her suffering. Her hand moved to her chest in a gesture of wounded vulnerability that she had clearly practiced extensively in front of mirrors. "Your Honor, I've dedicated my entire platform to fighting this kind of discrimination. I've built a community of 89,000 followers who look to me for advocacy and representation in a world that constantly tells them they don't deserve to take up space. When I walked into that gym and was treated with such disrespect and hostility, I knew I had a responsibility to speak out and expose what happened, not just for myself, but for every plus-size person who has ever been made to feel unwelcome in a fitness space." Judge Judy's expression remained neutral, but there was something in her eyes now, a sharpness that suggested she was seeing right through every calculated word and recognizing the performance for exactly what it was. "Miss Hargrove," she interrupted, her tone still professional but with an edge sharp enough to cut through steel. "I didn't ask for your analysis of systemic oppression or your theories about the fitness industry. I asked what specifically happened in that gym. What did you say to Mr. Chen? And what did he say to you?" The audience could feel the shift in energy, that moment of electricity in the air right before lightning strikes and changes everything forever. But Brenda, blinded by her own arrogance and completely misreading Judge Judy's patience for weakness, doubled down on her victim performance with even more dramatic intensity. She let out a shaky breath and dabbed at her eyes with a tissue she had conveniently positioned in her hand, even though no actual tears had fallen. "Okay, fine." I walked in and very politely asked if he would consider a partnership where I would promote his gym to my followers in exchange for a membership. I was literally offering him thousands of dollars worth of free advertising and exposure to an engaged audience that desperately needs to know about inclusive fitness spaces. Judge Judy leaned forward slightly, her eyes never leaving Brenda's face, watching every micro-expression and calculated gesture. "And when you say you very politely asked, what were your exact words?" Brenda shifted in her chair, clearly uncomfortable being pressed for actual specific details instead of being allowed to make vague accusations supported by emotional appeals. "I said something like, I have a large social media following, and I'd love to feature your gym on my platform if you could provide me with a membership." Something like that. Very friendly, very professional. Very straightforward business proposal. Judge Judy's tone became even more precise, like a surgeon making increasingly careful incisions. And what specifically did Mr. Chen say that you considered discriminatory or hostile? Brenda hesitated, realizing that she couldn't provide concrete examples without admitting she was lying about the nature of the interaction. Well, he didn't say anything specifically discriminatory, but it was his tone, and his energy, the way he looked at me, the way he dismissed my offer so quickly. You can tell when someone is discriminating against you based on their whole demeanor and attitude, even if they don't say specific words that are obviously fatphobic. Judge Judy's voice dropped to that deadly quiet tone that regular viewers knew meant she was about to spring a trap. So Mr. Chen didn't actually say anything discriminatory. He didn't mention your body size. He didn't make any comments about your appearance. He simply declined your business proposal. Is that accurate? Brenda's face flushed as she realized she had just admitted that no actual discrimination had occurred, but her arrogance wouldn't let her back down from the narrative she had built. Your Honor, discrimination isn't always about specific words. It's about the systemic patterns of exclusion that plus-size people face, and I could feel that energy coming from him. I know discrimination when I experience it. That's when Judge Judy decided to spring her first trap, her voice taking on that ice-cold quality that preceded total destruction. Miss Hargrove, I have the security camera footage from Mr. Chen's gym showing the entire 23-minute interaction between you two, with full audio. Would you like to revise your statement before I show that footage to the court? The color drained from Brenda's face as the realization hit her that Judge Judy had actual evidence, not just the edited version Brenda had posted online for her followers. Her confident posture collapsed slightly as she stammered, trying desperately to maintain her victim narrative, while knowing that objective evidence was about to expose her lies. The video shows what happened. I'm sure it captures the hostile environment he created. Judge Judy's voice turned absolutely frigid with controlled fury. Yes, it does show what happened. It shows you demanding a free membership worth $400 annually. It shows you becoming increasingly hostile and disruptive when Mr. Chen politely declined your demand. It shows you accusing him of discrimination despite him treating you exactly the same way he treats every influencer who asks for free services. It shows you threatening to destroy his business on social media if he didn't give you what you wanted. And most importantly, it shows you performing for your friends' cameras, deliberately creating confrontational content for your social media channels with calculated precision. Brenda's supporters in the gallery began shifting uncomfortably as they realized their hero might not be telling the truth about what actually happened. Brenda herself was visibly panicking now, her carefully rehearsed victim performance crumbling under the weight of actual evidence and factual testimony. Everyone negotiates in business. That's normal. You have to advocate for yourself and your value. I wasn't trying to lie about anything. Judge Judy's response was swift and absolutely merciless, delivered with the precision of someone who had been waiting for this exact moment. You weren't trying to advocate for yourself, Miss Hargrove. You were trying to extort money from Mr. Chen by threatening to destroy his business with false accusations of discrimination. And you've done this before, haven't you? Brenda's eyes went wide with shock and dawning horror as she realized Judge Judy knew far more than she should. What? No, I don't know what you're talking about. This is the first time I've ever had to deal with discrimination like this. Judge Judy opened another folder. This one significantly thicker than the first, and the audience could feel the temperature in the room drop as she prepared to detonate the nuclear evidence she had been saving. Let me refresh your memory, Miss Hargrove. Bakery in Sacramento. Owner paid you $18,000 after you posted a similar video claiming discrimination. Boutique clothing store in Portland. $45,000 in lost revenue after your harassment campaign. Yoga studio in Seattle. $22,000 settlement. Coffee shop in San Francisco that closed permanently after your coordinated attack. Should I continue? I have documentation of 46 separate businesses you've targeted using this exact same pattern over the past 4 years, with total settlements and damages exceeding $890,000. The courtroom absolutely erupted in gasps and shocked murmurs as the full scope of Brenda's criminal enterprise began to emerge for everyone to see. Her supporters looked absolutely stunned, some of them already pulling out their phones to start distancing themselves from her on social media before the backlash hit them too. Several were frantically deleting their supportive posts and comments in real time. Brenda's face had gone from pale to absolutely ashen, the color of someone who had just realized their entire world was about to collapse, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. Those are all different situations. Those businesses actually did discriminate against me. This is victim blaming, and you're dismissing my lived experiences of discrimination. Judge Judy's laugh was cold and absolutely humorless, the sound of someone who had heard every excuse and lie imaginable over 40 years of judicial experience. Really, all 46 businesses discriminated against you in exactly the same way. They all refused your demands for free services, and then you all posted edited videos, and they all paid you money to make your harassment campaign stop? That's quite a coincidence, Miss Hargrove. Or perhaps, and I think this is far more likely based on the evidence, you're a calculating predator who has been systematically targeting vulnerable small business owners, mostly immigrants and first-generation Americans, who you knew would be too afraid or too financially strained to fight back against your extortion schemes disguised as social justice activism. Brenda tried desperately to regain her composure, falling back on the victim persona and social justice language that had always worked before to shut down criticism and questioning. Your Honor, I really feel like you're being hostile toward me right now and dismissing my experiences as a plus-size person in a fat-phobic society. I came here expecting a fair hearing, and instead, you're attacking me and questioning my character and my advocacy work. This feels really uncomfortable and honestly kind of discriminatory against me as someone who experiences systemic oppression. The audience couldn't believe what they were witnessing in real time. This woman was actually trying to play the victim card on Judge Judy, accusing one of the most respected judges in television history of discrimination and hostility, trying to use the same manipulation tactics that had worked on 46 previous victims who had been too intimidated to fight back. It was like watching someone bring a plastic knife to a nuclear war. Judge Judy's response was the moment that would be replayed 200 million times across every platform. The moment that would become the most iconic takedown in courtroom television history. The moment when America's toughest judge destroyed the most manipulative fraud in social media history. She stood up from her bench, something she almost never did. And her voice carried the weight of 4 decades of judicial authority combined with righteous moral fury at someone who had weaponized legitimate discrimination concerns for personal profit. Miss Hargrove, I am going to give you one opportunity to show some respect in my courtroom and stop insulting my intelligence. You are not on Instagram right now. You are not performing for your followers. You are not manipulating vulnerable people who are afraid of being called discriminatory. You are in a court of law where your lies and manipulations have real consequences, and where your victim performance means absolutely nothing in the face of actual evidence. Now sit down, be quiet, and let me finish exposing exactly who you are and what you've been doing to innocent people for profit. But Brenda, in the biggest mistake of her 48-year-old life, decided to double down on her disrespect and victimhood performance one final time. She stood up from her chair, crossed her arms defensively, and said the words that would destroy her entire future and become the most regretted sentence of her entire life. She stood up from her chair, crossed her arms defensively, and said the words that would destroy her entire future and become the most regretted sentence of her entire life. Whatever. You're just a stupid judge who doesn't understand what it's like to face real discrimination in this world. Maybe if you actually lived in a marginalized body, instead of sitting up there in your privilege, you'd understand that I'm fighting for justice. But you're just another boomer who's out of touch with reality. This whole thing is a joke, and honestly, you're the biggest joke here. She turned to the cameras positioned around the courtroom, a smirk playing at the corners of her mouth as she added with venomous contempt, "My followers are going to expose you for the discriminatory, fat-phobic enabler you are. Thanks for the content, Judge Karen. This is going to be so viral." The silence that followed was absolutely apocalyptic. Even Brenda's most devoted supporters in the audience looked absolutely horrified at what they had just witnessed. Marcus Chen sat frozen in complete shock that someone could actually be this disrespectful to a judge in an active courtroom. The bailiff took 2 steps forward, his hand moving toward Brenda in preparation for what everyone knew was about to happen. Several audience members had their hands over their mouths in disbelief. The camera operators zoomed in instinctively, knowing they were capturing a moment that would be studied and analyzed for years to come. And Judge Judy transformed into something that looked like the physical embodiment of righteous fury, about to rain down divine justice on the most entitled, manipulative fraud who had ever stood in her courtroom. Her voice dropped to that deadly whisper that somehow carried more weight and power than if she had been shouting at the top of her lungs. "You just made the biggest mistake of your pathetic, fraud-filled life, Miss Hargrove. Sit down right now before I hold you in contempt of court and have you removed in handcuffs." Brenda, finally realizing she had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed, sank back into her chair as tears began forming in her eyes. But they weren't tears of genuine remorse or sadness. They were tears of rage, embarrassment, and the dawning realization that she had just destroyed herself on national television in front of millions of viewers who would never forget this moment. But Judge Judy was just getting started, and what happened next would become the most devastating judicial takedown in television history. A systematic destruction of Brenda's lies that would be taught in law schools and communication classes as the perfect example of how evidence and truth always defeat manipulation and performance. "Let's talk about the real world, Miss Hargrove, since you seem to think I don't understand it," Judge Judy began, her tone colder than Arctic ice. "The real world where fraud is a federal crime. The real world where extortion carries a prison sentence of up to 20 years. The real world where defamation comes with serious financial penalties that can bankrupt you for life. The real world where using false discrimination claims to extort money from innocent people is both morally reprehensible and criminally prosecutable. You wanted to lecture me about the real world? Allow me to educate you about what the real world does to criminals who hide behind social justice language while destroying innocent lives for profit." Judge Judy reached into her folder and began pulling out document after document, each one representing another piece of evidence in what had clearly been an exhaustive investigation that went far beyond anything Brenda had prepared for. "First, let's discuss the money, Miss Hargrove. You've collected $890,000 through extortion over 4 years, targeting 47 different small businesses with your manufactured discrimination incidents. You've generated approximately $15,000 per month through social media monetization of content created through fraud, harassment, and defamation. That's $1.61 million in total income over 4 years that you have never properly reported to the IRS. Tax evasion, Miss Hargrove, is a federal crime that can result in 5 years in prison and fines of up to $250,000. Brenda tried to interrupt with a stammering defense about her accountant handling her finances, but Judge Judy cut her off immediately with the precision of a surgeon removing a cancer. "Oh, we'll get to your accountant in a moment. He's actually cooperating with federal investigators right now in exchange for immunity. But right now, we're talking about you and your systematic pattern of targeting vulnerable business owners who happen to be immigrants, who happen to have limited resources to fight back against false accusations, who happen to be exactly the type of people you claim to support with your social justice rhetoric, while you're actually exploiting them for money." The courtroom was absolutely silent except for Judge Judy's voice, as she methodically dismantled every aspect of Brenda's criminal operation with the kind of detailed precision that could only come from weeks of thorough investigation. "But the money is just the beginning of your crimes, Miss Hargrove. Let's talk about the course you've been selling for $997, called Monetizing Your Activism: How to Make Discrimination Work for You." Brenda's face went completely white as Judge Judy held up printed screenshots of the course materials that Brenda had desperately tried to keep hidden from public view. "You've been teaching other influencers how to commit the exact same fraud you've been perpetrating. You have literally created a step-by-step blueprint for extortion, and you've sold it to 67 other people who are now running their own schemes targeting small businesses across the country." Judge Judy began reading directly from the course materials, her voice dripping with contempt. Module 3. Selecting Vulnerable Targets: Small Businesses That Can't Fight Back. Your own words, Miss Hargrove. You specifically instruct your students to target immigrant-owned businesses because, and I quote, "they're more afraid of discrimination accusations and less likely to have resources for extended legal battles." Module 5. Creating the Perfect Discrimination Incident: Staging and Recording Techniques. You literally teach people how to manufacture fake discrimination incidents for profit. The audience was completely transfixed, unable to look away from the systematic exposure of fraud that was unfolding before their eyes. Several of Brenda's former supporters had tears streaming down their faces as they realized they had been defending and supporting a criminal who had weaponized their genuine concerns about discrimination for personal profit. "But here's what makes your crimes truly despicable, Miss Hargrove," Judge Judy continued, her voice taking on an even more serious tone. "You didn't just steal money from these business owners, you destroyed their reputations, their livelihoods, their mental health, their families. I have testimony from 6 of your victims who attempted suicide after your harassment campaigns destroyed everything they had worked for. I have documentation of 3 marriages that ended in divorce because of the financial and emotional stress your fraud caused. I have evidence of children who were bullied at school because their parents were accused of discrimination by your followers." Brenda was sobbing now, her mascara running down her face in dark streaks, her carefully constructed image completely shattered. But Judge Judy showed no mercy, no sympathy for someone who had shown absolutely no compassion for the dozens of innocent people whose lives she had destroyed. "You want to talk about marginalization and oppression, Miss Hargrove? Let me tell you about real victims. Maria Santos, the bakery owner you targeted in Sacramento. She's a 54-year-old immigrant from El Salvador who survived a civil war, worked as a housekeeper for 20 years while raising 3 children alone, and finally saved enough to open her dream bakery. You destroyed that dream in 72 hours with your lies, and she paid you $18,000 she didn't have just to make your harassment stop. She's now working 2 jobs to pay off the debt your extortion created." Judge Judy pulled out another document, her voice never wavering from that tone of controlled fury. "David Nguyen, the gym owner you targeted in Portland before you came after Mr. Chen. He's a 41-year-old refugee from Vietnam who lost his entire family during the war. He built his fitness studio from nothing, offering free classes to at-risk youth in his community. You accused him of discrimination, mobilized your followers to destroy his business with fake reviews and harassment, and he paid you $28,000 to make it stop. He lost his business 6 months later and now works as a janitor to support his elderly mother. The courtroom was filled with the sounds of people quietly crying as Judge Judy revealed the real human cost of Brenda's crimes. Marcus Chen had tears streaming down his face as he realized he wasn't alone, that there were dozens of other victims who had suffered the same calculated cruelty he had experienced. But what you don't know, Miss Hargrove, what you couldn't possibly have anticipated when you walked into my courtroom with your arrogant attitude and your victim performance, is that I have something that's going to destroy any remaining shred of credibility you might try to salvage from this disaster. Judge Judy reached into her folder one final time and pulled out a small digital audio player that she placed on the bench in front of her. This is a recording from one of your private strategy sessions with your attorney, recorded by someone in your inner circle who finally grew disgusted with what you were doing and decided to cooperate with law enforcement. Brenda's eyes went wide with absolute terror as she realized what was about to happen. No, you can't. That's privileged attorney-client communication. That's illegal. Judge Judy's smile was cold and absolutely terrifying. Actually, Miss Hargrove, attorney-client privilege doesn't protect communications made in furtherance of a crime or fraud. Your attorney is currently under investigation by the California State Bar for his role in your extortion scheme, and he's already been informed that these recordings will be used in criminal proceedings against both of you. She pressed play on the audio device, and Brenda's voice filled the courtroom with crystal clarity, speaking words that would destroy her forever. Listen, I know the gym owner didn't actually discriminate against me, Brenda's recorded voice said with casual cruelty. But that doesn't matter. What matters is that I can make it look like discrimination to my followers. And I can make his life hell until he pays me to go away. These immigrants are always so afraid of being called racist or discriminatory that they'll pay anything to make the accusations stop. Her attorney's voice could be heard responding. And you're confident he can't prove that nothing discriminatory actually happened? Brenda's laugh on the recording was genuinely chilling in its callousness. Oh, he probably has security footage, but my followers don't care about evidence. They care about the narrative. Once I post my edited video and mobilize the outrage, his business is done. He'll be begging to settle within a week. They always do. These people don't understand that in the court of public opinion, the accusation is the conviction. I've done this 40 times now, and it works every single time. The courtroom erupted in absolute chaos as the recording continued, with Brenda and her attorney discussing specific tactics for maximizing emotional impact, identifying the most vulnerable targets, and calculating settlement amounts based on the victim's estimated financial resources. Several audience members were shouting in anger. Brenda's former supporters were crying and screaming about betrayal. The bailiff had to call for backup to maintain order. Judge Judy let the chaos continue for exactly 30 seconds before bringing down her gavel with a crack that silenced the entire room instantly. Miss Hargrove, you are without question one of the most despicable frauds I have encountered in 40 years of judicial experience. You have taken legitimate concerns about discrimination and weaponized them for personal profit while actually victimizing the exact vulnerable populations you claim to protect. Brenda tried one last desperate attempt to salvage something from the wreckage of her life. Please, Your Honor, I'm sorry. I made mistakes. I can change. Please don't do this to me. I have a platform. I have followers who depend on me. Judge Judy's interruption was swift and absolutely merciless. You have nothing except the criminal charges you're about to face. Your platform will be gone by tomorrow when every social media company bans you for fraud and harassment. Your followers will abandon you the moment they realize you've been using them as weapons to commit crimes. And you have no one to blame but yourself for the prison sentence you're about to serve. The final verdict was delivered with the cold precision of someone who had been waiting decades to deliver justice. This perfect, this complete, this devastating. Judgment for the plaintiff, Mr. Marcus Chen, in the amount of $180,000. That includes full restitution for business losses, compensation for emotional distress, punitive damages for your fraudulent and malicious behavior, and legal fees. The judgment will be paid immediately from your accounts, which I've already arranged to have frozen pending this decision. Brenda collapsed in her chair, sobbing uncontrollably as Judge Judy continued her systematic destruction. Furthermore, I am ordering you to post the unedited security footage from Mr. Chen's gym on all your social media platforms, along with a full written apology admitting that you lied about discrimination, that you manufactured the incident for profit, and that Mr. Chen did nothing wrong. This apology will remain pinned on your accounts for 1 full year, or until those accounts are permanently banned, whichever comes first. Additionally, I am referring this case to the FBI for investigation of wire fraud, extortion, conspiracy, and racketeering under the RICO Act. I am referring it to the Federal Trade Commission for investigation of deceptive business practices related to your course. I am referring it to the IRS for investigation of tax evasion. And I am referring it to the California Attorney General's Office for investigation of your systematic targeting of small businesses across this state. Finally, I am ordering that transcripts of this proceeding and copies of all evidence be sent to every college you applied to as a motivational speaker, every brand that has ever sponsored your content, every social media platform where you have an account, and every single one of the 67 people who purchased your fraud course so they understand that they are now under investigation as co-conspirators in your criminal enterprise. The gavel came down with a crack that sounded like the end of Brenda's entire world. Case dismissed. Get out of my courtroom before I add contempt charges to your growing list of crimes. Within 2 hours of the episode airing, the internet absolutely exploded in ways that shattered every previous record for viral courtroom content. The clip of Brenda calling Judge Judy a stupid judge had been viewed 50 million times before the episode even finished airing on the West Coast. The hashtag #StupidJudgeBackfire reached 8.9 million tweets within 6 hours, becoming the #1 trending topic globally across Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook simultaneously. YouTube commentary channels created over 15,000 videos analyzing every moment of the confrontation within the first 48 hours. Legal experts appeared on every major news network to discuss the implications of the case. Social media platforms began emergency policy reviews about influencer fraud. And Brenda Hargrove became the most universally hated person on the internet, replacing every previous holder of that dubious title. But the real story was what happened in the weeks and months that followed. As Judge Judy's exposure of Brenda's criminal enterprise triggered a cascading series of consequences that would change social media, influencer culture, and small business protections forever. Within 24 hours, Instagram permanently banned Brenda's account for coordinated harassment and fraud. TikTok followed within 36 hours. Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube all banned her within the first week. Her 89,000 followers evaporated as people scrambled to delete their supportive comments and distance themselves from her crimes. The brands that had sponsored her content issued public apologies and donated the equivalent of Brenda's sponsorship fees to organizations supporting small businesses. The FBI investigation moved with unprecedented speed, culminating in Brenda's arrest 6 weeks after the episode aired on charges of wire fraud, extortion, conspiracy, and money laundering. 34 of the 67 people who had purchased her fraud course were also arrested as part of a coordinated multi-state operation that the FBI called the largest influencer fraud takedown in agency history. The IRS audit revealed that Brenda had hidden over $2.3 million in unreported income through complex schemes involving cryptocurrency and offshore accounts. She was hit with $4.7 million in back taxes, penalties, and fines that guaranteed her financial ruin for the rest of her life. 43 of Brenda's previous victims filed a massive class action lawsuit that resulted in an additional $6.8 million judgment against her. Her house was seized, her cars were repossessed, and every asset she had accumulated through years of fraud was liquidated to pay restitution to the people whose lives she had destroyed. But perhaps the most significant impact was the legislative and policy changes that followed. Congress held hearings on influencer fraud and social media accountability, resulting in new federal laws that made it easier to prosecute fake discrimination claims and provided better protections for small businesses targeted by coordinated online harassment campaigns. Social media platforms implemented new verification systems for discrimination claims and created fast-track processes for businesses to appeal fake reviews and harassment campaigns. The Federal Trade Commission issued new guidelines requiring influencers to disclose any legal disputes or settlements in their content, with violations resulting in permanent platform bans and significant fines. Marcus Chen used his settlement money to establish the Small Business Defense Fund, a non-profit organization that provides free legal representation to small business owners targeted by influencer extortion schemes. Within the first year, the fund had helped 89 businesses successfully fight false claims and recover damages from fraudulent influencers. As for Brenda Hargrove, she was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison after pleading guilty to multiple counts of wire fraud, extortion, and conspiracy. Her attorney received 7 years for his role in the scheme. During her sentencing hearing, the judge specifically cited Judge Judy's thorough investigation and exposure of the fraud as instrumental in bringing Brenda to justice. In a final twist of irony, Brenda's prison mugshot became one of the most shared images on social media, used as a cautionary tale about what happens when people weaponize legitimate social justice concerns for personal profit. The woman who had built an empire on manufactured outrage and fake victimhood became a permanent symbol of fraud exposed and justice served. Judge Judy, in a rare interview about the case, summed it up perfectly. Miss Hargrove represented everything wrong with modern social media culture. She took real issues that deserve serious attention: discrimination, body positivity, social justice, and turned them into weapons for personal enrichment. She didn't just steal money. She made it harder for real victims of discrimination to be believed and taken seriously. That's unforgivable. And I'm glad we could expose her before she destroyed even more innocent lives. The case became the most watched episode in Judge Judy's entire 25-year run, with over 47 million viewers tuning in for the original broadcast and over 200 million viewing the clips online. It was studied in law schools as an example of how to systematically dismantle fraudulent claims with evidence. It was analyzed in communication courses as a demonstration of how performance and manipulation fail in the face of truth. And it was shared by millions of small business owners as proof that justice still exists for those brave enough to fight back against bullies who hide behind social justice language. If this complete destruction of the most manipulative influencer fraud in social media history restored your faith in justice, smash that subscribe button and share this with everyone who needs to see what happens when entitled criminals meet someone who won't tolerate their behavior. Tell us in the comments. What should happen to influencers who weaponize discrimination claims for profit? Should the punishment be even harsher? The story of Brenda Hargrove calling Judge Judy a stupid judge will be remembered forever as the moment when arrogance, fraud, and manipulation met their perfect match in America's toughest judge. It proved that no matter how many followers you have, no matter how convincing your victim performance, and no matter how successfully you've manipulated the system in the past, eventually truth catches up with you. And when it does, you better hope Judge Judy isn't the one holding the evidence.